Let's start recording. Okay, so today what we're going to cover is 2.1, which is going to cover some graphing. Okay, and I don't know if you saw it, but I did send an email sometime yesterday afternoon that actually has these handouts. So if you wanted to print them ahead of time and then just take your notes on exactly what I'm lecturing, it might just save you some writing. From now on, I'm going to send these out for the whole week on the weekend before that week. So sometime this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I will send out all these handouts that I will be using for Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week, if you wanted to print them off ahead of time. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's get started. All right, number one says graph the equation by plotting points. So if you remember, we did some of those plotting point things Monday in the support. Okay, so we're going to use the stuff that we did in Monday's support class to kind of help us here. So our first equation is y equals 3/2 x plus 1. Now, pre-graphing calculators, you would go through and do all of this work by hand. Okay, what you would have to do is make your own XY chart. I'm just going to do this once, but then I'm going to translate this into the calculator to show you how it's much simpler. Okay, so you can choose any number in the world that you want for x, and you're going to put it in the x spot. So it's kind of like a machine that you're dumping into. So the easiest number to always plug in is 0. So if I replace this x with 0, so I'm dumping the 0 into the machine, I will have y equals 3/2, replace that x with 0, plus 1. Right? The reason that 0 is always nice is because when you multiply with it, it just turns into a 0, right? So that's why it's nice. So now I have y equals 3/2 times 0 is 0. Bring down the plus 1. So y equals 1. So when you dump the 0 in the x, do the work, it's going to spit out the y number that goes with that 0. So when I plug in 0, it gave me 1. In order to graph a line, you're going to need 2 points, right? If you just plot this point, you're just going to have a point on your graph. You're not going to know which direction that line's going unless you give it another point to connect it to. Okay, so we've got to get another point. Here's the tricky situation. When your x is hooked onto a fraction, you want to plug in a good number that's not going to give you a fraction when you're done, right? Because you want to get numbers here that are whole numbers just because they're easier to plot. Okay, so what I'm thinking is whatever the denominator of this fraction is, that's the number you want to choose to plug in for x. And here's why. So the only thing that's changing is this right here, right? The number you're plugging in for x. You're still using the same equation. You're just going to plug in a different number there. So since I said let's plug in whatever the denominator of that fraction. So I'm going to plug in a 2. So this is creating another point. I'm plugging in the 2 for x. Just like last time, I'm going to plug it in here. Do the work to get the y that's going to come with it. Here's why you want to use the denominator of the fraction. Those will cancel. And you're just left with whatever this number is. So bring down that 3, drop down the plus 1, and then add that to get 4. So when I plugged in 2, it spit out 4. Now, I know this is a line Because if your x is just an x, it's not an x squared or an x to the third power or an x in the denominator or not an absolute value bars or anything, nothing's happening to the x, it's just an x, that's going to make a straight line. Always. Okay, so what we want to do now is use the word. Plot these 2 points. Okay, so I'm just going to freehand plot these 2 points. Now, if you are looking at this sheet, if you did print off this sheet, look at your graph. You see these hash marks are actually going by 2s. So be careful when you plot that. But remember, when we're graphing in MATLAB, we can always use that sheet ordered pair that's in the yellow rectangle, right? So you want that number to be this, and we can work on this. This is what we do over in the lab next. You work on this, and I walk around and help you. Okay, so the first one I'm going to plot is 0, 1. So my x is 0, so I don't go. My x movement is don't go anywhere at all. My y movement is up 1. So my point would be at 0, 1. So there's the first point. Okay, like I said, you have to have another point, right? I can't tell if I don't have another point to connect to. I don't know if the line goes like this, this, this. You don't know until you give it the other point, give it that direction. So here's my next point, 2, 4. So my x is 2, so I'll go to the right 2. My y is 4, up 4. There's your other point. When you're graphing in MATLAB, once you drop that second point, it's automatically going to connect the 2 points.
Don't you always know that it's like that since it's positive?
Yeah, since that's positive, but it's positive, is it like that?
Yeah.
That? Yeah. But yes, you do know it's that direction. Absolutely. If this number is positive, your graph's going to be going in that, not this way. It's going to be going that way. Absolutely. Okay, and again, like I said, in MATLAB, once you drop that second point, it's going to connect the 2 points to draw your line. So let's say we don't want to do this every time. If you have your calculator, get it out, or if you have the app, the Calculator X app on your phone, there you go. Get it out and go to this Y equals button, which is your top left. You should open it up and you should have Y equals. If you have something in your first Y equals, just hit clear to clear it out. So the Y equals is there. That's already given to us, right? So we just type in 3/2x plus 1. To type in 3/2, you type in 3 divided by 2. So there's your 3 divided by 2. Now remember which one is your X button. It's got that X, that T. Should be right next to your alpha button. If you hit that, that's what's going to give you your X. And then plus 1. So go ahead and hit the graph button, which is your top right. So you should have a line that looks like this. That's not going to really help me unless I know points on this line, right? Because to graph in MATLAB, I have to plot 2 points. I can't do this. I mean, I might be able to eyeball one of them or something, but to get any points, hit the second button, which is probably blue, and then hit the graph button again. Because if you hit that graph button again, it's actually going to give you the table of an infinite amount of points that are on this line. Right, so do you see the one, and you can scroll up and down. I see 0, 1 on there. I do see 2, 4 on there. I also see several other points. You can choose any of them. You just have to pick 2 of them. That's going to save you, first of all, the headache of plugging in numbers for X. And a lot of times when your people are doing this by hand, they got this, they'll make their mistake here. Right? Especially if they don't plug in good numbers that are going to cancel out that fraction. Okay, so this y equals is where you're going to do all your graphing. If your y equals is giving you something funny, let me know. I bet you have some kind of stat plot thing turned on. That's weird. Go back to your. Yeah, see that. So when these are on, for some reason. So I don't know how those get turned on. Is anybody else's graphing weird? Here. So hit. Now hit your second, and then hit graph again. See, those are all your points. Okay. So that way you don't have to try and eyeball it from the graph. Okay. So just all right, now let me see your graph. Now let me see your table. Hit the second button.
It's not gonna do it. Actually,
Now hit that again. There it is.
okay.
Yeah. So this graphs it.
Okay.
And then if you hit this button before you hit that, it shows you all the points that are on that graph, whatever the shape of that graph is. Over to then yeah, it was that stat plot. I don't really know what's going on. Okay, now going to number 2. The difference between number 1 and number 2. Number 2 is also going to be a line. But here's what the nice thing about number 1 was you had the y equals already by itself. Okay, if not, then you're going to have to do some work to make that happen. And we did practice that in support on Monday. Remember those 3 questions where it said to solve for y? This is why you need to be able to do that. Because on number 2, you have 4y plus 2x equals -8. Now, when you go to do any graphing in your graphing calculator, where do you go? Y equals, which means this needs to say Y equals before you can use that button. So what we need to do first is get this Y by itself. Remember doing this on Monday. So I want Y by itself. The hooked on number goes away absolutely last. So I need to get rid of this plus 2x. So to get rid of adding 2x, I'm going to knock it out with a minus 2x on both sides. So now I have 4y is all that's left here. Drop down this equal. Now remember how we did this, right? One's an x and one's not, so I can't put them together. They're not like terms. So they're just going to come down as two separate terms over there on the right side of that equal sign. Okay, I always like to put, doesn't matter which comes in front, I always like to put my x term in front. Doesn't really matter. So I will have the negative 2x, then this minus 8. Still working on getting getting y by itself. So get rid of your hooked on number. I'm going to divide. So your 4's cancel. There's your y by itself. Equals negative. These are, you just made two fractions. So let's see if they reduce. What does negative 2/4 turn into? Negative 1/2. Right? So that does reduce. So negative 1/2 x. Then minus 8/4. So I'm dividing here. 8/4 gives me, right, so minus 2. Now, instead of making my XY chart, I'm just going to go to my Y equals and put this in. Right? There's no reason to go through all that hard work when you can just use this calculator. So, if you're still in that table right there, you can just hit second and quit. That just always takes you back to your home screen. So again, we're going to Y equals. You should have that last problem in there. So get Y equals and then just hit clear. So this time we're typing in negative 1/2 x minus 2. Now on your calculator, your negative button and your minus button are two separate buttons. The negative button is underneath your 3. So underneath your 3. So there's your negative button. So 1/2, which means 1 divided by 2. And then remember which one your x is. Once you do this several times, it's just going to be second nature to go to that thing for the x. So negative 1/2 x minus 2. Now remember so I'll always hit graph no matter what, just to see what the line or whatever shape it's going to be is going to look like. Because first of all, remember when you're graphing in MATLAB, the first thing you have to do is go over to that toolbox and tell it what shape you're going to graph, right? Whether it's going to be a line, sometimes your shapes are going to be different. Okay, but that's what you're going to have to tell MATLAB before you do anything is what shape it's about to be. Okay, so let's plot these points. So your line should be showing. Now hit the second button and then hit the graph button again, right? Because that's what tells you all that gives you all the points. Choose any one of them that you want. Even if you choose points that are not the same as my points, we're going to have the same line. And I'll show you why. I'm going to choose, don't choose any of them that have those decimals, right? Steer clear of those. Those are just too hard to plot. So let's see. I'm going to choose -2, -1 is one of them. and 2, -3. Just any of them that you want that are showing. So I'll plot this one first. -2, -1, which would mean left 2, down 1. Then 2, -3. My X move this time is +2, so I'll go to the right 2, down 3 for my Y. So right 2, down 3. And then connect them to draw the line. Now, just to show you that, let's see, another point I could have chosen was 0, -2. Right, that's in the table. Let's see if I would have plotted that point. My X move is 0, so I don't go left or right at all. My Y move would have been -2, so down 2. Look where that is. It's still on that line. So if I would have connected those two instead of these two, it's still the same line. Any points that are in this table are going to be on the same line. Doesn't matter. All right, number 3. So on this one, it's y equals -2x squared. When things start happening to the x, when they start having different exponents, or if they are put in the denominator, or in absolute value symbols, or something like that, that's what's going to start giving you a different shape than a line. Right? The good news about this one is y is already by itself. So I don't have to do any work on this particular problem to get y by itself. That's what you like to see, right? Because if you see that, you're going straight to here. And just type it in whatever this is. So I'm going to my y equals. You probably still have the last thing in there. Just clear it out. And type in what y equals. This one says -2. Remember, your negative button is the one below the 3. So -2. There's your x. X is always that same thing. Now there is a button. If you have a squared, there is a button that gets you into it in one step. Any other exponents, you use that little up arrow thing that's right below the clear button. That'll always put you up into the exponent. Okay, but this x squared button, it's kind of a little diagonal above that 7. That automatically puts your squared up there. So if you want to get there in one stroke instead of 2. But this little up arrow thing, that always puts your cursor up in the exponent. You can put whatever exponent you want up there. Okay, so let's see. Let's graph this one. So -2x squared, hit your graph button. So do you see what happened? It's not a line anymore. It's a U, just upside down. So I still follow the same rules. When you are in Math Lab, you're just going to go over to that toolbox, and instead of choosing that line to tell it you're going to graph a line, you're going to choose that U shape to graph the U shape. Then that yellow rectangle up top is going to give you instructions. It's just going to say, plot your first point. Where do you always get your points? Second table. Same steps. X squared graphs, I think, still just make you plot 2 points. So let's see, I'm gonna choose any one. Now, when you're doing x squared graphs, a lot of times your y's get big really fast because you're squaring the numbers. So just make sure your graph's only gonna go up and down so far. So just choose the points that are right there in the middle. So you could do negative, first of all, I would do 0, 0. Anytime I see that, I'm using that. Just because it's the easiest thing to plot, right?
Why work if you don't have to?
Right. Why? You're just trying to make things easier on yourself, right? And I'm going to do 3 points here to show you why it starts making the shape that it does. I'm going to do the point right above 0, 0 and the one right below it. So -1, -2, and +1, -2. Now remember, the first thing you're going to have to tell MATLAB is that you're making that shape. That's what you would choose over there in the toolbox. Plot some points. 0, 0. -1, -2, which would mean to the left 1, down 2. Now look at this one, +1, but still -2, which would mean instead of to the left, I'm going to the right 1 and then down 2. So that right here, when these two numbers have the same y, that's what's making that shape mirror itself. Okay, so this right here is what you would graph. And you'll start getting real familiar, especially with this shape. It's called a parabola. And we'll start seeing what makes different things happen to that parabola. This negative right here is what flipped it upside down. Okay, let's look at number 4. So anytime your highest exponent is a 2, your x's highest exponent is a 2, it's going to make that U shape every time. So let's look at what number 4 says. Y equals x squared plus 3. So this one should be a U shape also, right? If my x is squared, it should make a U shape. I'm going back to y equals, and luckily the y is already by itself again. So clear it out. X. And then hit your x squared button, that'll square it. Now, if you hit the up arrow and put the 2 up there that way, make sure you hit this right button, because if you don't, you're just going to continue typing up in the exponent. If you hit the x squared button, it puts the squared up there and then comes back down to the regular area. So just make sure, you should be able to see where your cursor is blinking. If it's still up in the exponent by the 2, just hit this little right arrow. That's what gets it out. Then what? Plus 3. So this again should be another U shape, because the x is squared. Then hit, let's get some points. Second table. I'm gonna try to use, points that are not too far off. So I'll do -1, 4. Zero, 3, and 1, 4. I think math is probably going to make you do 2. But again, this one and this one, when your y's are the same number like that, they're going to be mirroring each other. That's what's making the U shape. So let's see where this one would be. -1, 4 would be to the left 1, up 4, up 1, up 4. Zero, 3. So I don't go left or right at all because my x is 0. My y is +3, so I'll go up 3. And this point, look, since they have the same y, they should line up with the y-axis in the same spot, right? That's going to be to the right 1 and up 4. Right 1, up 4. All right, number 5. All right, the difference on number 5 is the x is in the denominator of a fraction. That's going to make a weird graph. That's why when you're doing this one on MATLAB, it's going to be multiple choice. You're going to choose out of 4 graphs. Okay, and you'll see why. Let's look. It says y equals -3 over x. So the y is still by itself, so I can still go straight to y equals. Clear it out. And again, just type in exactly what you see. So -3 divided by x and then graph it. So this is what's called a rational function. You should see, I'm just going to freehand this one without plotting points. Since it's multiple choice, you should see a graph that looks like this. Okay, and the reason it's going to be multiple choice is even if you told MATLAB that you were going to graph this, it's going to be hard to, I don't know how many points they'd have to tell you to graph to make sure you got the right thing, right? There'd be points up here, points down here, all kinds of those. But this one is a multiple choice, and you'll see that when you get to MATLAB. 2 of your options are just going to be straight lines. There will only be one option where it has a graph here and there. Okay, so this section is just kind of getting you used to what different things happening to the x, what kind of different things happens to the graph. Number 6. Y equals, you're going to see this symbol. Those are absolute value bars. So that's going to give a different shape. So just a plain x gives you a line, x squared gives you the u. Let's see what absolute value bars are going to do. So go to your y equals and clear it. So where are we going to find this in the calculator? Oh, really? Mine? I didn't know there was multiple ways. The way I've always done it is I hit this map button that's below the alpha button, below your green button. There's a button called map. Now, up in this top part, go right 1 over to where it says NUM. Then you'll notice the very first thing under that, number 1 should say ABS. Just hit that, hit enter. I don't know if y'all's way is quicker or what, but I didn't even know there was multiple ways. So that now you should see in your y equals, you should have some absolute value bars. So just type x minus 6 inside of that. So x minus 6. I don't know if you need to arrow, just to be safe, arrow to the right to get out of the absolute value bar. I don't think it's necessary, but. So let's graph that and see what this gives me. So it's very similar to x squared. Instead of a U shape, it's a V shape. Absolute value graphs are V shapes. Now, this is the only one that's going to be a little different in Math Lab. Usually it just tells you to plot any random points. And then it figures it out because you've already told it what shape you're trying to graph. When you're doing absolute value, it makes you plot the vertex first. The vertex is this point right here. So when I'm looking at this, the vertex is that point to where, first of all, let's look at the table. The y's are going to start mirroring each other again, right? That's what makes on the U and the V this happen because they have same y's. So when I'm looking at this, if you'll look where the x is 6. When the x is 6, what is the y? What goes with the 6? 0. What? Look right above that point. So the 5. If the x is 5, what is its y? 1. Look right below the 6. So when the x is 7, what is y? 1. There's your mirror. That's where it's starting to mirror. If you're looking at that graph, if you're eyeballing it, you can tell that its vertex is right there on the x-axis. Which means that's where the vertex is going to be, right on that x-axis where the y is 0 right there. So this is your vertex that on either side of it, it starts mirroring. That's going to be the point that MATLAB is going to ask you to plot first. It'll say that up in the yellow rectangle. Instead of saying plot a point on the graph or whatever it says, it's going to say plot the vertex. So you just have to make sure you plot that point first. So 0, 6. I mean, excuse me, 6, 0 to the right 6. And then up and down 0. And then it's actually just going to make you plot one other point. So to the right 5 up 1. And to the right 7 up 1. So just remember when you're on the absolute value problem to plot your vertex first. All right, 2 more. Y equals x cubed plus 2. So this one's going to be even a different shape, right? Something different's happening to the x. That's what gives it its shape. So once again, the y is already by itself. So the only problem that we had to do any pre-work before we went to y equals was on problem number 2. Right? I can go straight to y equals, clear it out. So this time I need to type in x to the third. So hit your x button. Now there is no one-step button like x squared. So I do have to hit this up arrow that's right below clear. That's what puts your cursor up in the exponent. And you type in whatever your exponent is. In this case, it's a 3. Now, when I do that, look where my cursor still is. Is your cursor still up there with the 3? Right? This is not where this goes. That's what I was talking about earlier. So hit your right arrow to put your cursor back down here. So just hit the right arrow. And then the +2. And then graphic. So look what shape x to the third graphs give you. That's the cubic function. This looks like a squiggle to me. So before you plot any points on the graph, you'll have to tell MATLAB that's what I'm going to graph. A cube. And when you hover over this, it's going to call it the cubic tool, which just means your x is cubed. So tell MATLAB first that that's the shape you want to draw. And I think it may make you plot 4 points on this. So we'll just plot 4 points. So go to second table. Woo. So you'll notice, look at your y's. I'm not going to try and plot 8, 514, right? It's not even going to let me. So just go scroll up and down until you get to those numbers that you're going to be able to plot, right? MATLAB's going to let you plot a y of 514. You know what? It must not be 4 because I don't think there's. It is 4 points already? Okay, so the 4 best points I think would start with your x being -2, right? And then the 4 points after that, or 3 points after that. Because if you'll notice, once you start getting away from that, it's going to give you y's that you can't plot. So -2, -6, -1, 1, 0, 2, and 1, 3. So remember, when you're plotting these, remember, even if the lines are super duper small, you're constantly using that it's either up here in the yellow rectangle or it's down here at the bottom, right? When you're moving your cursor all around, in one of these spots is going to tell you where you are. So just make sure you're hovering over -2, -6, which will be left 2, down 6. -1, +1. So left 1, up 1. 0, 2. So my x is 0, so I'm not going left or right at all. I'm just going up 2. And +1, +3, which will be to the right 1 and up 3. So it'll connect them to draw that shape. All right, last one, y equals x squared -6. So go ahead and do this one and plot a couple of points. I'm going to call roll. When I say your name, tell me what number you're sitting at. And then we need to sit there for the rest of the semester. They're just making us do seating charts first. Oh, you're 3. All right, Braden Adams. 18. Alyssa Bynum. Number 5. Oh, sorry. squared minus 6. Phyllis, I got you. Christian, 6. Sarah, 24. William,
14.
Joshua,
8.
Nellie, Shalija, Joshua. Oh, you know what? I'm not going by way of woman, so didn't tell me else. Okay. Dylan, that's what I meant to say.
10.
Right, Dylan, where are you?
10.
Right, Nelly, you're at 1. Shalija, 22. Oh, I had 2 Joshua. Joshua Grissom.
That's
Okay,
fine.
I got you. I got you.
8. sorry.
8. Okay. I was like, wait, hold on. Okay. Sean Trees? Not here? Ellis?
Here, 21.
21. Kazia? 7. Maya?
12.
12.
I'm sorry.
Deshaun?
20.
20. Chance?
23.
Ian?
4.
Drew? Drew? Oh, I got you, Drew. Kimberly?
3.
You here?
13.
Brayden?
9.
Carrie, I got you. Michaela?
17.
Jace?
15.
15. Carson?
11.
11. And Grace? 19. Okay, anybody didn't call? Okay, so real quick. So in y equals, you should have x squared minus 6. It's going to make a U shape, right? Because your x is squared. I need 2 points. I'll do 0, -6, -1, -5, and 1, -5. I always like to do when I know it's a U shape, find 2 y's that are the same, because that's what's going to make the mirror. So let's see, 0, -6. So just down 6. Then to the left 1, down 5. And the other one is +1, -5. So that's the right one, down 5. And then there's your U shape. Okay. Okay, so support is going to be across the hall. I sent you the video. I made a support for 2.2 video and put it in your course content week 1 folder yesterday afternoon. So I did that. So I'm not going to lecture across the hall. I'm just going to walk around helping wherever anybody is stuck. So you can use this time to get ahead, do your homework. And Drew and Carrie, I will restart this if you need. That way, if y'all have questions, y'all can ask.
Okay.
So I'll just restart this at 10 o'clock. So just click on the same links and I'll just I'll check it. So if y'all have any questions.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.